Hi everyone, welcome to the fourth week of this course on theoretical perspectives and key ideas in anthropology. Time flies. This week we're going to be looking at approaches that are materialistic in anthropology and also looking at what anthropologists have done with this question of practice. And you may notice those two words, materialism and practice, in some ways are in a kind of immediate counterpoint or dialectical opposition with the key term that we looked at last week, which was that of culture, which, as we saw, had a strongly mentalistic tendency towards it, this focus on meaning, on interpretation and understanding. This week we're looking at approaches that say, well, it's all very well and good with meaning and understanding, but all that is a bit frothy, because underlying it are people's practices which are material and have to do with the material conditions in which they live. And the materiality of human life forms the basis out of which these more ideational, more ideological, more meaning-oriented questions emerge. So to look at meaning in its own terms is to misunderstand, according to this approach, the fundamentally material basis of human existence and how important and determining that is for the kinds of questions that anthropologists are interested in asking and answering, right? Now, the big figure, as we'll see this week, that kind of really instigates that whole thought process within anthropology is, of course, the great German political philosopher, economist and activist Karl Marx. So in some ways, really, this is the Marxism week in anthropology. And this is a massively important current of thinking, of course, since the 19th century. Marxism has not only been important in philosophy, in the development of social science, of economics and so on, or rather not of economics so much as political economy, as we'll see. In many ways, Marxists are critical of the way that economists in the kind of liberal traditions that are still taught in universities like UCL operate. But apart from this enormous, towering academic influence, Marx, of course, has a towering political influence. So the 20th century was largely defined by the opposition between Marxist-aligned countries and their opponents in what they would see as the capitalist world, or what that world itself would see as liberal democracy and freedom and so on. So the Cold War. And of course, anthropology as a discipline emerged in a period in which these oppositions were very much at the surface of people's consciousness. So the opposition, the political opposition between the left and the right, of course, is massively significant in the development of a discipline such as anthropology. And Marxist approaches self-consciously aligned with the left, have had a massive influence, often in conjunction with anti-colonial approaches within anthropology as well, as we'll see. So this is what we're looking at today. As you know, this opening clip I often use as an opportunity to kind of put my own cards on the table and tell you a little bit about how I myself think about the approach that we're looking at. And I guess my take on materialism and practice theory and the influence of Marx in anthropology is one of absolutely deep respect. I think anthropology would be hugely poorer without the kinds of insights that Marxist and materialist approaches have offered to the way that we understand social and cultural phenomena as anthropologists. I think there's a fundamental truth in the kinds of issues that these approaches put on the table. Issues of inequality, exploitation, issues of unequal power distribution, indeed intimately connected with the critique of colonialism within and beyond anthropology. And all this is hugely valuable. At the same time, the way that I often feel about these kinds of approaches within anthropology would be summarized in the expression "cut the crap." So the Marxist, the materialist anthropologist is the kind of anthropologist who says to other anthropologists very often, can we cut the crap now, please, and realize that all of this emerges out of fundamental, unequal and exploitative relationships. And there's a kind of underlying kind of tendency to be a little bit reductivist sometimes in these approaches. This cut the crap can be a kind of reality call, but it can also be sometimes a little bit wing clipping, a little bit curtailing of the anthropological imagination, the ability to imagine different possibilities of life that might go beyond some of the basic premises that materialist approaches take as their point of departure. The questions of, as I say, of power, inequality, exploitation, and so on. So massively important though those things are, and I think any anthropology that doesn't take them into account is bad anthropology. They can also be sometimes limiting, in my view, and in that sense also in some ways a little bit unanthropological. If you take, like I do, anthropology to be a discipline that is oriented towards opening up new windows of possibility in our thinking about what the world might be, how it might be constituted, what might be possible within it. These kinds of materialist approaches sometimes have a tendency a little bit cantankerously to close windows, to say that window is not worth opening. It isn't true enough. It doesn't kind of cut the mustard from a materialist point of view, and therefore should not be entertained seriously. And as an anthropologist, I find that sometimes a little bit limiting. So I'll leave it at that, and I'll see you in the next clip where we'll give you I'll give you a sense of what the core idea of materialism in anthropology actually is. So see you there.